Hi everyone, my name is Alberto, and I do developer relations at Moonbeam. Thank you to Whaler for this invitation. And today I'm gonna briefly speak to you about, Polkadot, Moonbeam, cross-chain connected contracts, and a lot of different topics. So I think let's get right into it. So in order to understand Moonbeam, right, we need to sort of set the tone and understand how Polkadot works. It's gonna be a very brief explanation about Polkadot, but it's to lay the foundation then to understand how Moonbeam is positioned in the blockchain ecosystem. So the main Polkadot idea is a specialization and connectivity, right? There's no one blockchain to rule them all. There are many best blockchains out there. And so the idea is that Polkadot provides a layer 0, or it's called also the relay chain, that connects all these specialized blockchains that do things very, very specific, but very, very efficiently. And so you can think of Polkadot as a hub, as a ring that has ports of connections where these other blockchains can connect to. These other blockchains are called parachains, and parachains are parallel blockchains that are special in many ways. So they are built specifically to do something very efficiently, and they provide a functionality to the greater ecosystem, right? So you will have parachains that are specific to privacy, to storage, to identity, to oracles, to bridges, etc. And so basically, if you think about it, Polkadot is not a blockchain where you can actually build on top of, right? But it's only a blockchain to connect these parachains and secure them and provide consensus. But then on the other hand, you also have these parallel blockchains that they don't have consensus themselves, so they need Polkadot. And so it creates a really interesting relationship in which, Polkadot is nothing without the parachains, but then the parachains are nothing without Polkadot. And this architecture is very interesting because if these parachains cannot communicate with each other, they're just isolated blockchains like any other blockchain out there. And so the Polkadot architecture really welcomes interoperability. And the language or the way that these parachains or participants talk to each other is through something called XCM. They can communicate with each other natively. And the cool thing is that this can create really interesting use cases in which users on Moonbeam can access the centralized storage through another parachain via XCM, for example. Right? So the question is now, what is Moonbeam? So to answer that question, I'm actually going to do a small demo, right? So that you understand a little bit what Moonbeam is about. And so, if you're familiar with any sort of Ethereum-like blockchain, I have here MetaMask connected to the Moonbeam testnet, and you see that I have an account, I have tokens of the testnet, and you can see here that I have a token, an ERC20 token here. You can also have NFTs. You can check the activity and so on, right? It's like we were connected to Ethereum mainnet, for example. If you're a developer, right, you can also use Remix. I have here a very simple incrementer contract. This is a smart contract that has a number, and then we can increase this number by 1 by calling a specific function. So you can see here that I have MetaMask connected to, Remix, and then I can deploy my smart contract with an initial value of 1. And so right now you can see that as with any other Ethereum-like smart contract, blockchain, MetaMask will pop up, and I can just confirm the transaction, right? And now I'm deploying a smart contract that it's written in Solidity, which is this language just to write smart contracts on Ethereum, for example. And then you can see here in MetaMask that I have this pending transaction that I can check on the block explorer. And so this experience feels really familiar, if you have ever done transactions on Ethereum or any of the testnets, right? And so if you think about what all this means, right, it means that we have actually used sort of all these tools that are compatible on Ethereum, but without actually using Ethereum, we're actually using the Moonbeam testnet, right? And we can also once again go ahead and deploy an ERC20, right? So I've created here an ERC20 token that it's called Whaler for the purpose of the tutorial. And so I'm going to go ahead and deploy it. So this is a Whaler token. And once again, this would be exactly the same way that you would create an ERC20 token on Ethereum. And so the experience is very familiar, right? And so while this, ERC20 token is created, once again, think back about everything we just did, right? I mean, we used tools that people normally use on Ethereum. We use MetaMask, which is a wallet people use on Ethereum-like blockchains, like Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, etc., right? But we're using it on Moonbeam. And now that I have my, ERC20 token, I can actually go ahead and add it to MetaMask. And you will see here that I have, 1,000 Whaler DAO tokens in my wallet, right? And so let's go back to the presentation and understand what just happened, okay? And so Moonbeam is basically a smart contract parachain for the Polkadot ecosystem, okay? And so its main purpose is to be Ethereum compatible so that it works with all the tools, all the languages that developers are using on Ethereum. And so as any Ethereum compatible blockchain, the base layer, it's an EVM, it's an Ethereum virtual machine that helps you, execute smart contracts and other things. But we have added layers of bonuses or added features on top of that EVM compatibility, right? The first one is that we're built with Substrate. Substrate is a framework to build blockchains in Polkadot that, that makes it really easy to connect to Polkadot and benefit from the shared security and the interoperability that Polkadot offers. We have also full Web3 RPC support. In simple terms, this means that, you can connect MetaMask, as I showed you before. You can use tools like Remix, Hardhat, Ethers, Web3 JavaScript, Ethers JavaScript, Web3 Python, Foundry, etc., etc. These are tools that, use the Ethereum JSON RPC. And so Moonbeam, it completely supports the Ethereum JSON RPC. We have a unified account system, and this is really special because makes Moonbeam unique in the sense that Moonbeam uses Ethereum style accounts, right? So you can use, like I showed you, MetaMask to do staking on Moonbeam, to vote on governance on Moonbeam, and things like that. And last but not least, we've worked really hard so that developers find in Moonbeam an Ethereum-like development environment, right? You have like Gnosis, Multisig, Chainlink, the Graph, and these sort of tools that have become standard on Ethereum-compatible chains. They're available on Moonbeam as well, out of the box. And so how do you achieve Ethereum compatibility on Substrate, right? So remember that Moonbeam is built with this like tech stack that it's not the same one that Ethereum was built on. And so to understand this, you got to understand a little bit how a tool like MetaMask communicates with a network like Ethereum. And this is done something called via something called the Ethereum JSON RPC. So if MetaMask wants to know the balance of Alberto, of myself, the balance is not really stored on MetaMask. MetaMask just asks the blockchain what is Alberto's balance, right? And the node that is connected to the blockchain will actually fetch that information and send it back to MetaMask. So if we want to know Alberto's balance, MetaMask will ask the network what Alberto's balance is, and then the network will respond, hey, the balance of Alberto, it's XYZ. If you want to go into a little bit more detail, right, this is MetaMask connected to a testnet, and you can see that this is what is actually happening. MetaMask is basically doing this sort of call, in which you can see there, and then the response from the node is basically this, which seems weird, but this is just hexadecimal numbers to represent this value that then MetaMask just puts nicely displayed on the wallet, right? And so this is really cool because, this is not really human readable, but this is really human readable. And, if you understand this, this is basically the foundation of all the Ethereum compatible blockchains out there, right? That is why you can connect MetaMask to Moonbeam, because MetaMask is going to keep doing what it does against Ethereum, but Moonbeam is able to understand this and provide the response that MetaMask is expecting. And so basically, how Moonbeam is Ethereum compatible is that these interactions keep happening, right? MetaMask will ask the balance of the user, will ask Moonbeam the balance of a user, and then Moonbeam will basically use something called Frontier, which is like a translator between Ethereum language and then Substrate language, right? And I like to call it like a dictionary. And so, this calls, for example, Alberto's balance, the dictionary will say, hey, wait, this is an Ethereum language call. And then in Substrate, this means XYZ. And so it will provide a response as the wallet is expecting. And so this flow, this call and response flow is not broken. Another really cool thing is that we have an EVM with expanded features. And this is why Moonbeam uses Substrate and why Substrate is so powerful, right? If you think about the stuff I did in the demo, I was using MetaMask, I was using Remix, I was using what is called the Ethereum interface of Moonbeam, right? And this is the typical things a developer will do, for example, on Ethereum, right? But then Moonbeam also has something called the Substrate interface. And this is where really the advanced features are, basically. And in here is where we have the native staking of Moonbeam, the native governance of Moonbeam, this XCM language to communicate with other blockchains in the Polkadot ecosystem, right? This is where all of that actually resides. It's not in the Ethereum interface, it's in the Substrate interface. But, if you want a person, let's say Alice, to vote on governance, they cannot use MetaMask in the Substrate interface, right? Because I've shown you before, MetaMask only works with the Ethereum interface. And so what we have done in Moonbeam is that we've created sort of something called the precompiles, which allow people to call this advanced Substrate features through the Ethereum interface. And that's why if you've ever used the Moonbeam dApp, where you can, for example, stake, you do it with your Ethereum-like wallet, you can do it with Ledger and the Ethereum app of Ledger, etc., because this is the flow that it's happening. It's happening through the Ethereum interface that it calls the precompile, and the precompile called the Substrate interface. And then, it gets bumped into Moonbeam. So it's really cool because we can, because Substrate is so modular and you can customize it, we can create custom functions in Substrate that can be called through the Ethereum interface. And this means that we have a really more custom, basically EVM experience for developers through precompiles. And so let's now move into why the future is multi-chain, right? And this is really interesting because we're going to talk about why we feel that Moonbeam is uniquely positioned in this multi-chain future, but also about why we are moving to a multi-chain future and why no single blockchain will rule them all. And we're seeing that right now. That is a reality. It's not a prediction. It's now a reality, right? And so if you think about what has happened since the first blockchain was invented, when Bitcoin came along in 2009, it was the only blockchain out there, right? And then the first blockchains that started popping up were based on Bitcoin as well, on the same tech stack as Bitcoin, the same technology. But then, you have other blockchains like Ethereum, which basically use a new tech stack, right? But then building a blockchain from zero using a new tech stack, it's really complex. And so that is why you don't see like a million blockchains popping up, because developing one blockchain from the ground up is really complex. You have to have a big investment in time, in money, and resources in general, right? But then as the tech becomes more standard, for example, like Substrate or the Cosmos SDK, which are two frameworks to build blockchains very easy, And as we see more users, more assets, more services on different chains, we're going to see sort of like that it's really easy to build blockchains nowadays, right? With Substrate, I can build my own blockchain in probably 10 minutes. And then I can customize my blockchain to do something very specific relatively easily as well. And so we're going to start seeing, like we're doing now, blockchains that are very good in something and doing something particularly, right? And that is going to help sort of like onboard the next, million users, million assets, million services. And then blockchains are going to be used as a scale out strategy, right? Instead of me deploying to, Ethereum, it makes more sense for me to have my own blockchain so I can sort of deploy my game, for example, there and then onboard, a lot of users, right? And so we believe that as time goes on, we're going to see very, very specifically purposed blockchains that are going to need to be interconnected, right? Because if not, it's like everything are separated islands and there's no real interaction from one user in a blockchain. Imagine this user is playing on the specific blockchain, but they want to do something else in a separate blockchain. I don't know, a social network blockchain, right? they would have to, move there as well, right? And so that is why we believe that we're moving towards an even more fragmented multi-chain future. And so if you think about the different multi-chain approaches that we've seen currently, they're separated into like two buckets or two groups. On one end, you have what is called the centralized deployments, in which you deploy to a single blockchain, and then you ask these users to bridge liquidity, to bridge users basically into your deployment in your single blockchain. And so this has a bridging user experience and security, right? Because now you're asking users to use a bridge to basically move liquidity, in this case, to your application in a single blockchain. But the other type of deployment, of multi-instance deployment, is basically you grab the same smart contracts, you just throw them to every single blockchain that supports them, and then now you have multi-instance deployments, right? And the problem here is that you're fragmenting experiences, right? Like the users are fragmented, the features are fragmented, the liquidity is fragmented. And then maybe my deployment on Ethereum might have XYZ features, but then on Moonbeam, it might not have these features. And so users might just want to migrate, and it just creates a poor user experience as well. And so the idea of connected contracts is that, you can reach any user, any asset, or any service through Moonbeam, right? We got to stop thinking about isolated deployments that they're not sort of like aware of this like multi-chain future that we're moving towards, right? And so when I deploy a contract to Moonbeam, my contract needs to be able to understand that there's Ethereum, there's Cosmos, there's Avalanche, and there are also other parachains inside Polkadot. So that is the main idea of connected contracts. We also need to ensure that the user experience for a multi-chain cross-connected approach, it's great, right? That it's not that you need to hop from one blockchain to the other, et cetera, so that all the complexities are hidden to the end user, and that it's also basically the developer's work into ensuring that the user experience is still great. The idea would be that the user doesn't even know that they're using blockchain underneath, and then they're even like using multi-chain, like cross-connected contracts underneath. And so how Moonbeam supports connected contracts, right? Because Moonbeam, it's basically, you can design smart contracts that access functionality across many remote blockchains. Moonbeam is connected in Polkadot and XCM, but also Moonbeam has all the primary GMP protocols like Axelar, Wormhole, Layer 0, Hyperlane, and others, right? Moonbeam provides the ideal development environment because it's Ethereum compatible. And if you've worked with Ethereum, it has the most developed tools and tooling, and that's just great, right? To work with the Ethereum tools because they're so far ahead than the competition. And then because Moonbeam is connected to Polkadot, you can securely scale through specialized resources, right? So Polkadot will offer a rich ecosystem of specialized blockchains that each will provide a very specific service in a very efficient way. And so let's say you want to tap into decentralized storage. You can do so through Moonbeam to tap into that specific parachain that is providing the centralized storage. And the key innovation here that allows for all of this connectivity to happen, it's called general message passing. And this is a term that I've used before. And general message passing is basically the idea that, blockchains can now talk to each other. You can either move tokens or move messages. And so your deployment on Moonbeam can say to a deployment on Ethereum something. It can say, hey, can you, mint this NFT, or can you transfer these tokens, or can you just, increment this value, right? And Polkadot general message passing system is called XCM, basically. And so now if we compare the graph that we had before into this new graph of the type of connected contracts, we have, for example, a hub and spoke model in which the complex logic is focused on Moonbeam, and then simpler logic is deployed to other chains, right? This is different than the centralized approach because in this case, you have the brain of the operation in Moonbeam, but for example, assets can stay in Avalanche, let's say, and you can say, hey, imagine you want to mint, DAI on Ethereum, but you want to log your assets on Avalanche. You could do, the user can do a call in Avalanche, And then the operation in Moonbeam will process this call and say, okay, I have to go to Ethereum and mint DAI, right? So this is a true power of like a hub spoke model in connected contracts, that you are simplifying a little bit the user experience for this cross-chain, sort of experiences in general. And then the point-to-point model is basically that contracts are aware of other deployments, but then they're routed through different blockchains for whatever reason, to get to a destination. And then Moonbeam can just be part of that route, right? One of these examples is that it's live actually now is that, you can bring DOT, the Polkadot token, to the Cosmos ecosystem, to Osmosis, for example. And so basically how this works is that DOT is moved from Polkadot to Moonbeam through XCM. And then these DOTs are sent to the Cosmos ecosystem through Axelar network. And then Axelar network communicates with Osmosis using IBC, which is the interconnectivity language in Cosmos. And then that DOT reaches basically Osmosis, right? So it's one blockchain communicating with another, and then with another, and with another. And it's a point-to-point model. But once again, the idea is that the user experience is completely unaware. The user is completely unaware that these complex interactions are happening. So, just like I mentioned before, one of the ideas is that in the hub spoke model that you can use, Moonbeam as a hub for interoperability. Moonbeam is very well connected to the Polkadot ecosystem, but also to outside of the Polkadot ecosystem. And you can see here, for example, just a tutorial on an application in which we're actually using Moonbeam as a point of transmission of liquidity from, for example, Ethereum to parachains inside Polkadot, right? Let's say these parachains, Hydra, Interlay, Equilibrium, they need liquidity, but they don't have access to liquidity. Users can, with one click, send liquidity, let's say USDC liquidity from Ethereum to Hydra directly. And so in this case, Moonbeam is really well positioned because it can be like a gateway in and out of the Polkadot ecosystem. In this case, only for liquidity, but in the future, it can be for just a lot more, right? And so, yeah, if you think about the benefits of connected contracts approach, it solved the fragmentation issue that it's inherent from multi-chain, multi-instance approaches, right? This means that, we've seen projects like SushiSwap in the past where they have SushiSwap on Moonbeam, SushiSwap on Binance Smart Chain, SushiSwap on other, and they're completely fragmented, right? They're not really aware that the other deployments exist. We can also, with connected contracts, we can increase efficiency by using specialized chains and scale out strategies. This means that, when if you're a project that wants to tap to, let's say, once again, decentralized storage, you can do so with a connected contracts approach in which the centralized storage provider, it's a completely separate blockchain, but you're like natively connected to. And more importantly, you can improve end user experience by hiding infrastructural complexity, right? I'm going to go back to the example that I mentioned about moving Polkadot tokens to Osmosis, right? If you would have done this through sort of like hopping through different blockchains, you would need to do at least 2 or 3 hops, and that's really provides a really poor user experience, right? And it's really complex for some users. Well, if you just have, like, for example, a nice looking interface in which you have dots, you can just say, I want to send it to this Osmosis address, one click, and that's it. That it's more enticing for users to use this sort of like cross-chain experiences, right? And so I don't have a lot more to show you today. I did provided this information if you want to contact us at Moonbeam. You have moonbeam.network, our documentation site, which has a lot of great content, our Telegram channel, Discord, and Twitter. Today's presentation, you can find it in this QR code or this URL. But what I would do is take some time to show you a little bit of like how you can get started with Moonbeam if you're a developer and you're interested in just like building something, right? So I would definitely recommend you to check our documentation website. It is both available in English and in Chinese. And here you have a lot of great content on how to get started, on the grants program, on bug bounties and different things. We also have a really cool AI in which you can say how you can ask questions like how can I connect MetaMask to the Moonbeam testnet. And then, the AI will provide an answer, in probably a few seconds. But it's really cool because you just can ask the AI and you don't have to really look for in the documentation website. So yeah, it's really helpful to sort of get started. If you have any questions, you can ask for it. And if it doesn't work for you, you can just come to our Discord and definitely ask us, and we'll provide help. But let's say, you're interested and you're like, yeah, I do want to sort of start building on Moonbeam. How can I get started, in your testnet, right? So as you can see here, the AI is already telling you what to do to connect MetaMask, which is really cool. It has here all the information that you need. But we also provide a very simple button here. If you click Connect MetaMask and you connect to our testnet, which is Moonbase Alpha, you will see that, it will actually ask you to configure MetaMask to connect to it. And if you go through the menus, it will show you how to do it. If you want to go to the faucet, you just click this button and you'll be presented with the faucet, which is very simple. You just grab the address where you want the tokens and then basically just, do the CAPTCHA. I am not a robot, so I think I can solve this. And then I'll just submit this. And you can see here that this is requesting, and then you will be sent 1.1 tokens, right? This is the dev token. It has no value, but it can help you sort of, get started deploying a smart contract or whatever. So yeah, I invite you to sort of check our documentation website. We have a lot of great content here. If you want to check the tutorial section, also I do recommend it. It has a lot of really in-depth tutorials with more complicated examples, not as just an incremental contract. And so yeah, I would definitely invite you to check this out. And yeah, going back to how to contact us, feel free to jump into our Discord and ask us any questions there. We're more than happy to help. I think that's all I wanted to show you today. So once again, I would like to thank Whaler DAO for the opportunity here. And I hope I see you in Discord quite soon. So once again, this is Alberto, Developer Relations at Moonbeam, and thank you.